The chime of a Facebook message was an innocuous sound, one that usually signaled a reminder about a friend's birthday or a shared meme from my sister. That Tuesday evening, it was the pinprick that started the leak in the dam of my life. I was in the kitchen, wiping down counters after a dinner where my husband, David, and I had mostly talked about our son Liam's upcoming science fair. Our conversations had become a comfortable, well-worn map of domesticity: school, work, bills, repeat. "I'll go check on Liam's homework," David said, kissing my temple with a familiar, absent-minded affection. I nodded, finishing up before grabbing my phone from the charger. The notification glowed on the screen. "Mark Johnson sent you a message." My breath hitched. Mark Johnson. The name was a ghost from a life I'd lived over a decade ago, a life of college parties, late-night study sessions, and a love that felt like it would set the world on fire. We were young, passionate, and ultimately, headed in different directions. His ambition to build a tech startup in Seattle clashed with my desire for a stable, rooted life here in our hometown of Oak Creek, Illinois. Our breakup was a tear-soaked, dramatic thing, full of what ifs and if-onlys. I hadn't spoken to him in 12 years. With a furtive glance towards the living room, I opened the message. "Hey Sarah. Random, I know. Saw your profile and just had to say hi. Hope you're doing well. You look happy." Attached was a photo of me, David, and Liam at the zoo from 6 months ago. My smile in the picture looked genuine, which was the strangest part. I felt a flush of something: curiosity, nostalgia, a flicker of the old excitement. He remembered me. He thinks I look happy. That was the first mistake. Entertaining the thought. The second was replying later that night, after David was snoring softly beside me. The blue light of my phone illuminated my face in the dark as I typed, "Hi Mark. So random. Yeah, we're good. How are you? Seattle treating you well?" The reply was almost instantaneous. "It's okay. Busy. Successfully exited the startup last year. Lots of money, not a lot of fulfillment, I guess. Funny how life works out." And so it began. What started as a few messages a week became a daily ritual. I'd find myself checking my phone during my lunch break, a little thrill zipping through me when I saw his name. We talked about everything and nothing. His travels, my work as a paralegal, fond memories of college. He was witty, successful, and, most dangerously, he listened. He made me feel interesting again, not just like someone's mom or wife. He made me feel like Sarah, the girl with big dreams and a loud laugh, not just Sarah, the woman who worried about grocery lists and mortgage payments. David noticed my distraction. "You're on that phone a lot lately," he commented one Saturday, looking up from the car engine he was tinkering with in the driveway. "Just work stuff," I lied, the words tasting sour on my tongue. "A big case we're prepping for." David, ever trusting, just nodded and went back to his work. His trust was a fortress I was secretly tunneling under. The messages with Mark grew more personal. He confessed his marriage had ended amicably a year prior, that he felt adrift. I found myself complaining about the small frustrations in my own marriage, the lack of romance, the predictable routines. I was painting a picture of my life that was incomplete and unfairly bleak, and Mark was the sympathetic artist, telling me I deserved to feel cherished and alive. "You were always so full of life, Sarah," he wrote one evening. "It's a shame to think that spark might be dimmed." That message sat with me for days. Was my spark dimmed? I looked at David, a good man, a wonderful father, a reliable provider, and I wondered where the man who used to write me silly poems had gone. I didn't stop to consider that I was no longer the carefree girl who received them. We had built a life, a solid, real life, and I was comparing its foundation to the glittering, weightless fireworks of a secret digital affair. The turning point came when Mark suggested a call. "Hearing your voice would be nice," he wrote. For old time's sake. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was crossing a line I knew was there, a bright red one. But the part of me that missed the excitement, the part that felt unseen, pushed me forward. I told David the first was going for a drive to clear my head. I parked by the lake at the edge of town, the water dark and shimmering under the moonlight. With trembling fingers, I called him. His voice was deeper, but the cadence was the same. We talked for an hour, and it was like no time had passed at all. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. He told me I was beautiful and smart, and that any man would be lucky to have me. He was pouring gasoline on the embers of my dissatisfaction, and I was gladly fanning the flames. "I have to come see you, Sarah," he said, his voice earnest. "I'm flying to Chicago for a business meeting next week. Let me drive down, just for lunch. One lunch." Every sane, rational cell in my body screamed no. But the part of me that was addicted to the attention, the part that had already checked out of my marriage, whispered yes. "Okay," I heard myself say. Just lunch. The week that followed was a blur of anxiety and secret planning. I told David the first had a mandatory work conference a few towns over, a lie that came too easily now. The morning of the meeting, I dressed with more care than I had in years, choosing a dress David had always said he liked, feeling a pang of guilt that I twisted into resentment. Why didn't he make me feel like this anymore? Lunch was not just lunch. It was at a quaint bistro 2 hours away. Seeing Mark in person was a jolt. He was older, more polished, but his smile still had the same power. The conversation was easy, flirty, and filled with a palpable tension. He reached across the table and held my hand. I never stopped thinking about you, Sarah. It was everything I thought I wanted to hear. For a few hours, I was not a wife or a mother. I was the heroine of my own romantic movie. But as the afternoon wore on, a cold dread began to seep in. This wasn't real. This was a fantasy, a temporary escape. My phone buzzed in my purse. It was David. Hey, just checking in. Liam aced his spelling test. We miss you. Love you. The words were a bucket of ice water. Love you. I looked at Mark, who was regaling me with a story about a skiing trip in Aspen, and all I could think about was David helping Liam sound out his spelling words at the kitchen table. The image was so pure, so real, it shattered the fragile illusion I was clinging to. I have to go, I said abruptly, standing up. Mark looked surprised. So soon. I thought we could. No, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I can't. This was a mistake. I have a family. The drive home was a torment. The guilt was no longer a quiet whisper, it was a screaming siren in my head. What had I done? I had betrayed my husband's trust, I had lied, I had emotionally abandoned my family for a fantasy. I walked into my house, my heart pounding with a need to confess, to come clean and beg for forgiveness. But the universe had its own timeline for retribution. David was sitting on the couch, his posture rigid. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. My laptop was open on the coffee table in front of him. I had, in my distracted state, left my Facebook Messenger logged in. David, I whispered, my blood running cold. He looked up at me, and the pain in his eyes was a physical blow. Who was he, Sarah? His voice was quiet, dangerously calm. Was it worth it? Was your work conference worth this? The dam broke. I crumpled to the floor, sobbing, confessing everything. I told him about the messages, the call, the lunch. I begged, I pleaded, I promised it was nothing, that it was just a stupid mistake born out of boredom and loneliness. It wasn't nothing, he roared, finally unleashing his anger. He stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. You lied to me. You emotionally cheated on me. You went to see him. You let another man tell you you're beautiful while I was here, loving you, raising our son with you. How is that nothing? There was no answer I could give that would heal the wound I had inflicted. The weeks that followed were a special kind of hell. We tried to keep it from Liam, but children are intuitive. He knew mommy and daddy weren't speaking, that the air in the house was thick and heavy with sadness. We went to 2 marriage counseling sessions. David sat there, a statue of resentment, while I cried and promised to change. But the trust was gone. I had shattered it into a million pieces. He couldn't look at me without seeing my betrayal. He couldn't sleep in our bed. He moved to the guest room. The end came on a rainy Thursday. He came home from work early, his expression resolved. I can't do this, Sarah, he said, his voice hollow. I look at you, and all I feel is pain. I can't live in this house, in this memory of what we had. It's poisoned. Please, David, let's keep trying, I begged, tears streaming down my face. I've filed for divorce, he said, the words final and absolute. I've already found an apartment. I'll be out by the weekend. The reality of his words crashed down on me. He was leaving. He was taking Liam, our home, our shared life. I was losing everything. The divorce was swift and brutal. Because of my admitted infidelity, the settlement favored David. He got the house. He got primary custody of Liam. The judge, a stern-faced woman, stated that my actions demonstrated a lack of stability for the primary custodial environment. I was granted visitation every other weekend and 1 night a week. The day I moved out of the house we had bought together, the house where we brought Liam home from the hospital, was the worst day of my life. Liam, only 7, was crying, clinging to David's leg. Why do you have to go, Mommy? I had no answer that wouldn't further damage him. I'll see you on Friday, baby. I love you so much. I kissed his head, my tears mixing with his. I moved into a small, sterile apartment on the other side of town. The silence was deafening. The boxes sat unpacked for weeks. My life had been reduced to a countdown until my next visitation. I tried to call Mark once, in a moment of weak, twisted blame shifting, but the number was disconnected. He had vanished as quickly as he had appeared, his work in destroying my life complete. That was 2 years ago. The sharp, agonizing pain has since dulled into a constant, aching regret. I see Liam every other weekend. Our time together is precious, but it's also haunted by what I lost. He's growing up, and I'm missing half of it. He talks about his dad's new girlfriend, Jenny, who helps him with his art projects. He says it so innocently, not knowing that every word is a knife in my heart. David is moving on. He's polite, even cordial, when we exchange Liam, but the love is gone. He looks at me like I'm a stranger, which, perhaps, I am. I betrayed my husband for the fleeting thrill of a rekindled old love, a fantasy that evaporated the moment it touched reality. I traded a solid, loving marriage for a digital mirage, and in the process, I lost my best friend, my home, and the daily joy of watching my son grow up. I have a small apartment, a few weekends a month, and a lifetime of regret. The old love didn't lead me to a new happiness, it led me astray, and I was the one who foolishly, selfishly, followed. I lost everything, and I have no one to blame but myself.